on how we are to handle the keyboard. How we are to handle, I'm not talking of play now, I'm talking about the keyboard. But before I say that, if somebody can just read for me, Numbers chapter 7, verse 1. Numbers chapter 7, verse 1. Is anybody there? Numbers chapter 7, verse 1.
And it came to pass on the day that Moses had fully set up the tabernacle and had anointed it and sacrificed it and all the instruments thereof, both the altar and all the vessel therefore, and had anointed them and sacrificed them.
Thank you very much, Brother. See, all the instruments that were in that tabernacle were anointed and were sanctified. That's simply telling us that every instrument we find in the house of God are anointed and they are sanctified. I just want us to have a baseline. I just want to prop our minds so that we understand every instrument, from the smallest instruments, the microphones, whatever it is that is bought with church money or bought with the money of the people of God for church use, is sanctified and is anointed. Okay. The last place I want somebody to help us to read is Numbers chapter 4, verse 12. Numbers chapter 4, verse 12.
And they shall take all the instruments of ministry, wherewith minister in sanctuary, and put them in a cloth of blue, and cover them with a covering of badger's skin, and shall put them on a bar.
Thank you very much, Brother. So you see here, it talks about how to take care of those instruments. You don't just leave them lying out, God, this is God giving the instructions. That is those instruments of the ministry. The instruments of the ministry. This is Deeper Christian Life Ministry. All the instruments are the instruments of the ministry. And we use these instruments to minister in the sanctuary. We are to cover them. We are to put them somewhere. Why? These are because so that it will last. So what we are doing as biblical underpinnings, as biblical foundation, as biblical basis, that any instrument that is the instrument of the ministry, anointed and sanctified for the purpose of the ministry, we are to ensure, like we've seen in Numbers chapter 4, verse 12, that we take care of those instruments so that we are not hearing reports of that this one is, we are losing that one, we are losing this one, or this one is no longer productive, or this one we can't, it's not supposed to be. I'm not saying that instruments cannot degenerate due to wear and tear over time, but let it be a natural process, an organic process, rather than a man-made factor. So that's what, but to help us, especially for our churches that have big keyboards, like Adwick Church, like Redis Church, like Mostin Church, and of course, every other church, whether you have a medium-sized keyboard, or we need to be very, very thorough in the way we handle those keyboards and the way we manage them and maintain them, because we've seen that those instruments are the instruments of the ministry. They are anointed, they are sanctified, and God expects that we handle them with that understanding in mind. So without much ado, I'll just share my screen here. So I'll be quickly talking about the care of the keyboard. The care of the keyboard, okay? Now, so the care of the keyboard. So let me just put this to one side. All right, good. How do we care for this keyboard? And we have to pay attention to, especially those of us that are keyboardists, or those of us that will soon become keyboardists, because we want these keyboards to last. We want them to last. We don't want to, we want them to really, we want to use them for the length or the duration that the producer has in mind before, after producing that instrument. So the simple fact that for church keyboard, the facts I want to show us, which I've already read, is that number one, it's God's property. The keyboard, the one that, I know some of us use your personal keyboard, that one is your own property, okay? But the one that the church money, we use church money to buy, is God's property. It's not your property. And therefore, you can't, handle it the way you handle your own property. It's God's property. And it's an electrical instrument. It has implication. I know why I said that. We're going to look at it later. It's an electrical instrument, all right? It's also a delicate instrument. That means any little thing can cause damage on the keyboard. And let's say any little fall. For example, the trumpet is not a delicate. If the trumpet falls, you can pick it up and it will still be working well. But if a keyboard mistakenly drops, a lot of damage would have happened inside. So this is a very delicate instrument. And also all church musical instruments, including the keyboard, is under the choir leader's jurisdiction. And that's why I want the choir leaders to be here. Because whether the choir leader is a keyboardist or not a keyboardist, it doesn't matter. He or she has the ultimate responsibility of ensuring that the musical instruments in the church, the keyboard in particular now, is well maintained. And so if I, for example, go to Hardwick Church and I see that the keyboard there is not, maybe it's opened or they forgot to switch it off and it just hung like that, and I call the choir master, I shouldn't be referring me to, I'm not the keyboardist, I don't know what happened. No, you should take responsibility. It's your responsibility. The same thing if you come to Mostin and you find out that there is dust all over the keyboard there, I won't say, well, I was not the one that played that Sunday. No, the choir master there has the response, even if he has to make sure. The same thing with Redditch, the same thing with all our locations, because I understand that some of our locations, our choir masters are not keyboardists. That doesn't exonerate you from, ensuring that the keyboard is maintained. You don't just say, well, keyboardists, go and sort out yourself. No, you have to see to it that it is meant, because in the way we read, God was talking to Moses. Moses was to have the oversight, but Moses was not the high priest. At the same time, was not even the priest in any way. It was just, but God said, tell them this is what they must do. So the same thing, the choir leader has jurisdiction, to make sure that the keyboard, because if anything happens, we're not going to call the keyboardist. It is the choir leader in that location. We are going to ask, how did your keyboard get spoiled? So we're not going to go and be saying there are 3 keyboardists called them. That's not our own. The church will find out from the choir leader. You are the choir leader there. You are not just managing people, you're also managing the property of the choir. So you are managing the people in the choir as well as the property of the choir. And you must make sure that there is judicious use and accountability. Responsibility lies at the footstep, the doorstep of the choir leader, to ensure that the church instruments, the keyboards in particular, are well handled and are well maintained and taken care of. Now, to moving straight, how do we take care of the keyboard? I've noted some things that I want us, and I want the choir leaders to also know this, because this is not, this is common thing we should do. It's not technical, it's not rocket science, it's not, game theory, it's not music theory. This is just normal circular things that we could easily. So if you know these things as choir leader, then you can check up whether it's being done to the keyboard. And then where it's not being done, you step in and say, no, we must do this thing. So you don't say, well, I don't know how to take care of the keyboard, I'm not a keyboardist. No, this is what everybody can do. It's general knowledge. Okay, so the most these are not in order of importance, I just put them, as it comes to my mind, is switch off the keyboard after service. It's very, I've been to some locations where maybe I go there during weekdays to do something and I see their keyboard is still switched on. From Sunday they've used it, and maybe I came there on Tuesday or Wednesday, the keyboard is still on. Sometimes, I have to, it's not, because this is electrical instrument. We know, thank God, but in a country like this, it's like light is steady. So we don't expect them to take the light. But if there's a power cut and the light comes again and the keyboard is on, it can blow the thing, or maybe the current fluctuates in a way. So it's not, and apart from that, it is overloading, it is overworking the keyboard. It's like you leave an engine of a car running for days. You just on your car and you just leave the engine for that. It will run down the lifespan, the duration, the longevity of that equipment. So please, after the every service day, the keyboard must be switched off. And I said it has to be switched off from the keyboard before switching it off from the socket in the wall. I'm also guilty of that. Like, for example, in my own location, I don't know who does that, but somehow I find that anytime sometimes if I go to horn the keyboard and I horn the socket in the wall, the keyboard comes up and I'm like, okay, the last time we used this thing, we didn't switch it off from the keyboard. We went to switch it off from the wall. What of when I horned that socket in the wall? When I horned I don't know what they call that thing, the socket, the one connected to the wall, the mains. When I horn the mains, what of if is sudden surge or comes from the keyboard and the whole thing explodes? This is an electrical instrument. What you do with your electrical instrument is it's just like you want to bring out the battery of your car. You don't switch on your car and then go and bring it. You switch off and then you bring out the battery, or the same thing. So please, keyboardists, let's ensure that we switch off the keyboard from the keyboard first, then from the wall, after every service, so that they can rest. The keyboard can also breathe. The keyboard can rest, and then recuperate for the next time you want to use them. Then cover after service. So now I've ordered for keyboard covers for all our keyboards in the region. So I'll be sending them to the choir leaders. Our keyboard, whether small or great, must always be covered after every service. The reason is because dust can settle on the keyboard. And for example, the new keyboard we bought is touch screen. If dust keeps settling on the screen, before you know what's happening, the touch screen will not longer work, or anything can happen. Rain can, roof can leak, anything can happen. And then the keyboard should be covered with the covering clothes we are going to give you. Make both this, if you're using two keyboards in your location, the two keyboards must be covered. You finish and you finish. In fact, that's where we read in Numbers. That's what it says. Cover them. When you finish using those instruments of the ministry, cover them. So there should be not just switching it off, you cover. There should be covering. Then anytime because sometimes we may require to move the keyboard outside your location. Please, the keyboard must always be carried in its bag. All keyboards in the region now, at least the major ones, they have keyboard bags. Don't carry keyboards and just put in your car or in a taxi, because it can hook somewhere else. In the process of moving it, something can cut or something can drop or something can break. And then, some of these things, when they break and you may not find a way to replace them again, it becomes permanent damage. So please always carry the keyboard in the bag. So for example, we say we are doing something here, we want Muslim church to come with that, especially the big keyboards, because they have many parts that are shooting out and many buttons, and we say, we want Muslim church to bring their Tyros 5. Don't carry it. We have to carry it in a bag. It has a bag. We have to carry it in the bag to where we are going to. The same thing with all our, keyboards that we have in our locations. And please, if you are moving your keyboard outside your church location, let your choir leader be in the know. So we don't just see keyboard appearing somewhere and the choir leader is not aware that the keyboard, because like I said, he or she is in charge, all the instruments has been put in their trust, as the choir leader. So please let the choir leader know. Then let's clean the keyboards periodically. Some keyboards, if you think maybe go back to your church and check and just use your hand to rub, you see dust on keyboards. It's an electrical instrument. If dust settle on it and go, so that's why sometimes you find out that one key is no longer working again, or two keys are not working again, because dust have settled in over time. So maybe once in a month, you use a clean, not wet, don't use water. Don't go and put water and clean something, please, because it's an electrical instrument. If water gets inside, it can start shocking or it can damage something. Clean, dry, soft, not hard or rough, something soft so that it doesn't scratch any screen or scratch anything. Something soft, and wipe, give it a good wipe. All right, we do that periodically. We want it to last. So these are part of the ways we need to care for the keyboard. Then another thing we could do is we could appoint somebody that will be their responsibility to ensure that, for example, after every service, the keyboard is closed, the keyboard is covered, is off. That will be their responsibility to make sure that after every service, the keyboard is taken good care of. So it's not, yes, it's everybody's business as a choir member, as a choir leader, as a keyboardist, even if you're not the one appointed by the choir leader to kind of look to that business, it's still your responsibility. Before you leave the church, you are a keyboard, look at it. Is it covered? Is it off? Is it, we do it together. But the person that is given that responsibility by the choir leader will now be the one to ensure that, for example, okay, it's time to give this keyboard a good wipe. Bro X, bro Y, please, next week, try to give these two keyboards a good wipe. I'll bring a soft cloth we could use to do that. There should be somebody in charge of that. Then I've seen sometimes some people putting bottled water on the keyboard. Please, let's stop that, please. It's not appropriate. It's an electrical instrument. You don't put bottled water on on something like that. You can put your bottled water on the floor, or you have a stool by your side and put your bottled water. It doesn't look clean or good or pleasing to the eye to put bottled water, because the bottled water can tumble. Some people even finish playing and they forget the bottled water there. So good. Now, no legs on the keyboard stand. I know sometimes, the way the keyboard stand is, you want to play, you put your legs on the keyboard stand. If the keyboard stand can collapse under the weight of your leg, and if the keyboard stand collapse, the keyboard comes down, or maybe the key, we need to just also just mention that. Then this one is very important. Check the strength of the stand periodically. 1 month may be too small, but let's say maybe once in a year. Maybe once in a year. That shouldn't be 1 month, maybe once in a year, and replace where necessary some of our key. So, because you can imagine a stand carrying a keyboard for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. You've not even checked whether the knot that you are using to hold that place that is you are adjusting, whether it's breaking already or whether the thing is shaking already. You just leave the keyboard and you have been pressing. You need to do some, I don't know what they call it in engineering, but whether it's tensile test or stress test, you have to say, okay, is this keyboard stand still okay to carry the weight of this keyboard for another year, or do we need to make a replacement? You have to always check that, maybe once in a year, determine when to do that, because some people can leave a keyboard on the place for 5 years, they will not check anything, they just leave, and one day it will just come to say that the keyboard has collapsed. So please, these are simple ways of caring for the keyboard. And the last part, which is the final part, is the keyboard is not a toy for kids to play with. Sometimes I watch and I see children run to the keyboard, they go and be playing with the keyboard. Please, that is not a toy. It's not, it's an anointed instrument. It's a sanctified instrument that, we shouldn't toil or allow children to toil or make a toy out of these instruments. We are to gently move them away from there. Because we just have to explain to their parents that, please, the parents may say, oh, let them just, it's not, you can buy, if you want them to, you can buy toy keyboard. This is God's instrument. And we don't just want a child coming there, touch, or press, please. Let's ensure that we kind of desist children from doing that. Then the last but not the least is actually for the big keyboard. When I mean the big keyboards, it's not for training would-be keyboardists. So what I mean is this: maybe some people are learning keyboard for the first time, or they are trying to learn. You leave the small keyboard. It is the big keyboard you are using to train them. Please, it's not let's not use it for training new keyboardists. We can use the smaller keyboards to do that. You don't train somebody from up, you train from down. Let the person be used to the smaller keyboard first, know how to manage the smaller keyboard first before you move the person up. And I pray that the Lord will bless us in Jesus' name. Let's remember once again, the church instruments are God's property. Let's use and maintain them with reverence and godly fear. And the Lord will bless us as we do so in Jesus' name. So that's the end for the keyboardist. Any question before we pray and then we dismiss the keyboardist and then